ロックマン脱出なのだ。
A short while ago, I finished the first Mega Man Legends game, and I really enjoyed it. It's a departure from normal Mega Man games because rather than being a traditional action platformer, the game is mostly focused on the adventure Mega Man and his companions go on. And let me tell you, Capcom did a pretty good job with this game. I loved exploring Cadillac Island and building a relationship with everyone on it. The standouts being the Bonne pirates, of course. These guys were pretty funny. And the action is still here in Legends, you just have to get used to this game's dated PlayStation controls before combat gets comfortable or anything. The only other thing about Legends I wasn't a huge fan of was how the game suddenly has world-ending stakes at the end. But other than that, I found Mega Man Legends to be a very fun game to play through. So I was pretty excited to start the sequel game, Mega Man Legends 2. And good news, I think Mega Man Legends 2 is a good game. And for the most part, it succeeds in doing what a sequel is supposed to do as far as building on the strengths of its predecessor. The world is deepened, we explore the characters' backstories and identities more, gameplay has been improved, and so on. It's a very thought out game, and that's partly because the team who worked on it revisited a lot of their unused ideas from Mega Man Legends 1 while they were developing it. Here's the thing though, I'm not ready to say this game is better than Legends. Mega Man Legends wasn't the most successful game ever. In a 2007 interview with the game's producer, Keiji Inafune, he was reported saying the game didn't sell very well, which he attributes to it being ahead of its time. But according to a Capcom representative, Mega Man Legends' popularity was still looked at in a favorable light by the company. So the next game in the series that Capcom Production Studio 2 would work on would be the spin-off game, The Misadventures of Tron Bonne. This game wasn't too successful either, only selling 61,000 copies the year it was released. But it was special in that a month before it dropped, Capcom announced the Japanese version would come with a playable demo for their newest game, Mega Man Legends 2. I'm gonna speak more about this spin-off in this demo later, by the way. They're just as interesting as the final game. So, in 2000, the year after Tron Bonne was released in Japan, we finally got the second Legends game, which I'm just gonna dive into. We have a lot to talk about.
Hi there, what's up? You're that digger called Mega Man, aren't you?
The story takes place about a year after the events of Legends. If you remember from the last game, we play as Mega Man Volnut, a digger who searches abandoned ruins for refractors, the main source of energy in this world. And he's also accompanied by his friend and spotter, Roll Casket, her grandfather, Barrel Casket, and this robo-monkey named Data. I also just want to correct something real quick. In my last Mega Man Legends video, I said Mega Man and Roll were kinda siblings, which I just assumed because they seemed close, and that's their relationship in the mainline games. But this game makes it very clear they're not related at all. In fact, this game is all about Mega Man and Roll's origins. See, it starts in an airship with Beryl, who's holding a press conference with his old wealthy friend Werner von Blucher. Werner has recently recruited Beryl to help him find the rumored ultimate refractor, the Motherlode, and it's gotten a lot of attention because they plan on venturing to it. When a reporter asks them what they think the Motherlode actually is, Beryl notices she looks like his long-lost daughter Matilda. Then another reporter calls Matilda out and she warns her father, and Werner, that the Motherlode isn't what they think it is before jumping out of the ship and flying away on, well, this thing. All the while, Mega Man and Roll have been watching the entire press conference on a television set they have inside their airship, the Flutter, and Roll notices that that woman is her mother. They then make plans to visit Beryl and Werner so they can figure out what's going on, and they have a little journey which leads them to the same uninhabitable island that Beryl and Werner were headed to. And after Mega Man defeats the Reaverbot that was living on it, he doesn't find the Motherlode, but a girl and her servant. And while the expedition for the Motherlode wasn't exactly successful, it turns out this girl, Sarah, knows how to obtain it. And she tells Werner, who tells Mega Man, under the condition that he and Roll help them find it. All they need to do is find the proper keys, which are scattered all across the world. So Mega Man and Roll agreed to help find the keys to access the Motherlode, and from there the game really starts. This game takes a lot more setting up than Legends did, but trust me, there's a lot I left out. When Capcom boasted that Legends 2 would feature a larger scale universe, they weren't just talking about the world itself. The entire plot has been cranked to 11 as well, with a more cinematic presentation, a largely increased cast of characters, and without spoiling, far more dire stakes than before. But this does come at the cost of the game losing a lot of its charm for me. Legends 2 is still as cute a game as ever, and it didn't take a Jack 2 turn into edginess or anything.
I'm gonna kill Praxis!
But man, can the story be a downer at times. What you learn about some of these characters is a tragedy. I make it no secret, I prefer relatively lighthearted stories like the first game had. I know everyone isn't going to agree with me on this point because it's personal preference really whether or not you like heavier stories, but one thing I hope we can all agree on is that this story could have used more levity at least. The Bonds are still here and they're funny enough, but their time is mostly occupied with these other uninteresting antagonists they formed an uneasy alliance with to steal the Motherlode. Tron also has a pretty stupid subplot where she tries to steal Mega Man from Roll by convincing him that she doesn't care about him. I'm not upset at the game for attempting to explore Tron's character and relationship with Mega Man more because I think the Bonne pirates are interesting characters. But this game half-asses it when it comes to fleshing out all of its villains except for the main one. This Tron and Roll subplot goes away as quickly as it comes, and I can't even remember the name of most of these other pirates. I know this guy is named Glide because he's an antagonist in Tron's game. As for these two guys, well, if you've never played this game and you ask me to name them without looking them up, your guess would be as good as mine. And when I say this game has no levity, I also mean it's lacking in optional content to take the edge off. It's there, but what do we really have? A skating minigame, a quiz minigame with one side quest that links to it, you can buy gifts for Roll, decorate the Flutter, rebuild this village, and that's most of it. There's extra ruins you can unlock and explore as well, but all you do in this game is explore ruins. The Legend series and the GameCube Pokemon games have me convinced you really do need something extra to break up all the monotony. And unfortunately, the something extra that this game has is just not enough. I mean, compare the extra content in this game to Legends, where side quests actually existed and they were fun. I enjoyed helping the cops stop the bank robbery and bringing items from my expeditions back to the museum so they could put them on display. I also like rebuilding the city so we could even unlock a lot of those extra missions in the first place. And the best part of it all was you built a connection with a lot of the people on Cadillacs Island. You know, it sticks with you when you help a bunch of kids build a secret base and help this young ill girl walk again. You grow to care about these people. That's why it's genuinely heartwarming at the end of the game when you see them wave you off. Unfortunately, I didn't find Legends 2 outstanding in that way, at all. That's not to say there isn't anything memorable about any of these islands though. It's fun getting to see more of this flooded earth and how these different islands have adapted to it. One thing I complained about in Legends was how samey everything looked, so it's nice to see more of these wildly different environments. And these Reaverbot designs are so diverse. Some of them are really creepy, others are cute, and a couple of them even got slight updates to look more menacing, but they all look great. In Mega Man Legends 2, everything just stands out more. Mega Man and Roll got slight model redesigns that look a bit more professional, houses are cluttered with more objects on the shelves and whatnot, and even a lot of the buildings and structures you see all around have more interesting designs than the ones in Legends. The music in this game is fine, although I'm not the biggest fan of Mega Man's new voice. I'll admit his voice actor Corey Sevier did sound a bit amateur in Mega Man Legends, but that's because he was around 13 at the time. It fits Mega Man's character. His voice actor this time around is a lady named Susan Roman. I get why his voice was changed, so I'm not holding this against the game in any way, and she definitely sounds more professional, but I still prefer Mega Man's old voice. Like here, listen to these two examples and let me know what you think.
What's happening to me? This is the first time I've ever been here, but I feel like I've seen this before.
Roll,
Breakfast ready. I made the eggs just the way you like them. Hey, look, it's Gramps.
Another thing I really liked about Legends 2 were the ruins themselves. Most of them were a pretty fun collection of dungeons that flowed well. There was a fair bit of backtracking required in each of the main ruins, and they all had little things like electric floors that would greatly slow your walk speed. But I was never too frustrated with these ruins or scratching my head on where to go or anything. Except for a few of these bonus ruins, they're all specialized with gimmicks now, which give them more identity. In this one, nature is overgrown, this one is lava themed, ice themed, this one plays with gravity, these ruins are flooded. Actually, the water ruins are easily my least favorite part of this game. Mega Man's speed slows to a crawl, and you have to do a fair bit of platforming and backtracking here. Taking damage is the worst because the fall animation takes so long to recover from. When you leave the ruins, it feels like that moment when Rock Lee takes off his leg weights, you know what I mean? This is the only time where it felt like the game was starting to drag to me. The gameplay loop of the entire game is you travel to a new town, you save it, then you visit the nearby ruins to find these keys. And it's comfortable enough because you don't overstay your welcome at any point, except for in these water ruins. At least we're introduced to some new enemy variants, I guess. You can stand on top of these fish, that's kinda cool. And again, the rest of the ruins were fine. It's just the water ruins I never want to play through again. Now, I've put off talking about how this game actually plays for a while, but that's because it's not that different from Legends. The few improvements they made do go a long way though. For starters, you use the D-pad to control Mega Man while the shoulder buttons control the camera. But you aren't forced to use this control scheme anymore, because this game has DualShock support. Yeah, it has analog controls now, meaning you're allowed to move freely in any direction, and you're able to look anywhere now. I get the feeling Capcom wants you to play this game with DualShock because the ruins in this game play with verticality more. There's a lot more climbing and having to shoot things that are above or below you in this game. I personally still prefer the directional controls, but this is a welcome addition. The Buster weapon is the same as well. You can't charge it, but you can alter it with different Buster parts that affect how it fires. And Mega Man can also lift now. He can just like pick enemies and other NPCs up and toss them around. That's pretty fun. What's not so fun is, between the events of this game and its predecessor, Roll sold off a bunch of Mega Man's upgrades to upgrade the Flutter, meaning you'll have to purchase and scavenge a bunch of parts again. Just like before, you'll have to bring materials to Roll and she'll construct special weapons or special boots for you. As far as these special weapons go though, I honestly just stuck with the homing missiles for a majority of my playthroughs. They dealt solid damage and they honed in on enemies, plus it was the first thing I was able to construct, so it just became all reliable to me. Don't fix what ain't broke. Another major improvement is the simple ability to walk while you're targeting enemies now. It's a small change, but it makes Legends 2 a more pleasant experience to play through. It was annoying running circles around enemies and only getting a few pot shots in before. You got used to it pretty quickly, but it wasn't ideal. Meanwhile, my finger was practically glued to the lock-on button in this game. The only problem now is, this game likes to target enemies far away when there's usually a more convenient one right in front of you. That means you'll have to quickly change who you're aiming at, and while this isn't a direct improvement on the gameplay controls, there is the addition of status effects now. They all hinder you. Burn and frostbite slowly drain your health, paralysis, as I mentioned before, greatly slows your walk speed, and rot not only prevents you from attacking, but it also drains your special weapon gauge. The good news is, you can prevent all of these, except for rot, if you equip the appropriate boots. And if you somehow still get hit with something that ails you, you can heal from it with a medicine bottle you can buy at shops. It's a lot like the energy canteen that heals you. My biggest complaint for the gameplay would be that it's still a bit too easy for my liking. Actually, I think it was easier than Legends 1 even. Excluding some of these bullet sponge reaver bots, I breezed through a bunch of this game's enemies and bosses pretty damn quick. To be fair though, the game is more fair to the player now, and it's not like I first tried all of these in-game missions either. Speaking of missions, let's talk about the story some more. I'm not gonna go into spoilers or anything this time, but I will say I really did not care for this game's plot. Same as the first game's ending, I think the story is ruined by all the grand sci-fi elements they introduce when they really started off with something more grounded and interesting. We're back to fighting ancient god-tier robots and stopping the apocalypse again in Legends 2. Yeah, I'm not a fan, but let me start with what I liked about the story before getting into why I prefer Legends 1 over this game. I liked what this game had going on with the running theme of discovering your origins. For Roll, she's on a quest to reunite with her mother and learn more about her parents. For Mega Man, he learns more about how he came to be, and his purpose as a super fighting robot, as we were promised to learn at the end of the first game. I also really appreciate how this game attempts to dive into other things that give it both emotional and philosophical depth. Rebirth, possession, true identity, and free will. All interesting topics for a Mega Man game of all things to dive into. Problem is, they only really begin to explain and dive into this stuff towards the end of the story. I said the gameplay loop was paced well, but that doesn't extend to the actual story itself. For most of the game, you're fighting the Bonnes and other pirates and collecting keys. Then you're suddenly learning about how humanity almost went extinct, and the train doesn't stop there. Again, I can't say much without spoiling, but when I say they stack it on you, I mean they stack it on you. Not only does this story make the same exact mistake as its predecessor by adding all of this towards the end, but the story also tries to do too much for its own good. Why are we introduced and given multiple scenes with characters who serve no purpose besides giving us a few boss fights, when there's an entire storyline over here that has an interesting build-up and unfortunately an unsatisfying payoff? Or excuse me, it would be more fair to say some of these plot threads don't have any follow-up. Honestly, I think I'm more upset by the ending of this game than the first one because there are plenty of elements in this story I love, and plenty of other things I wasn't so big on, but I was still willing to give a chance because I had this constant thought, maybe the game will go somewhere interesting with this, but unfortunately they aren't given the time they're deserved and it makes for a forgettable and disappointing experience. And listen, as much as I bitch and complain, I really do think this story could have been something interesting. It just did not deliver for me. So what about Mega Man Legends 3? Instead of ending with the promise of more information in the next game like before, Mega Man Legends 2 ends with a cliffhanger that leaves the future of the series completely up in the air. And seeing as how this is still the newest game in the Legends series, despite there being an attempt, a cancellation, and widespread interest of a third game to tie everything together, I wouldn't hold out hope for a new Legends anytime soon. Little did we know, there already was a third game though. And no, I'm not talking about the Misadventures of Tron Bonne. I'll get to that in a second, I promise. What I'm talking about is the mobile game Rockman Dash Great Adventure on 5 Islands. You see, before the time of smartphones and every mobile game being a gacha, Japanese video game companies used to make full-fledged games for feature phones, or keitai as they're known in Japan. Seriously, you just think of a popular Japanese series that existed in the early 2000s and chances are it had a keitai game. Kingdom Hearts, Super Monkey Ball, Katamari, Taiko, Xenosaga, Chowaniki, Kingsfield, Shiren the Wanderer, Ridge Racer, Silent Hill, Jet Set Radio, Ys, Lost Planet, Persona, actually, the Megami Tensei series as a whole, Choo Choo Rocket, Castlevania, Onimusha, Klonoa, the list goes on, you get my point. Keitai games used to be a thing. Unfortunately, I had to say they used to be a thing, because the services a lot of these games were obtainable through stopped selling them as the years went on, and as a result, they faded further into obscurity. Many of these keitai games are now considered lost media. If you didn't buy them in Japan when they were purchasable, then tough luck. But that doesn't mean all hope is lost. Did you even wonder how you're seeing footage of this Mega Man game right now? Well, that's thanks to the efforts of video game preservationists who buy these old phones from Japan and dump them. The entire process isn't as simple as I just made it sound though. though. As far as I understand it, it's a whole lot of trouble that involves decrypting these phones and just praying they have the desired games as well. But I do know video game preservation should be a concern for anyone who cares about video games. Even if they're not great games, the fact any work of art could be lost to time is a tragedy. I'm gonna leave a link to the Keitai wiki in the description if you'd like to learn more about all this. There's a Discord as well, check it out. 5 Islands has been preserved by Scilab Secrets, a team that specializes in preserving Mega Man's, or Rockman's, mini Keitai games. They announced their success with this game in early 2024 and also led fans to a download where they could play it themselves. That's how you're seeing this footage. And well, that was a lot of build up for me to just say this game is nice for what it is. It's Mega Man Legends, but on a phone. It's not a one-to-one port or anything, as it tells its own original story, and the entire game has a linear mission structure now, but I'm still impressed by all they were able to do with this game. This game has targeting, an inventory system, storefronts, unlockable weapons, and you can even travel between islands. Yeah, for a mobile game this is pretty fucking cool. If I have to say anything negative about this game that's not even really negative, just the circumstances I happen to play this game under, it's that this game is entirely in Japanese, but thankfully there's an English patch on the way. Honestly, I haven't even played through the entire game yet because of something to do with the SD card I didn't want to figure out. But I did play through all of Rockman-2 Episode 1. This is just a demo of Mega Man Legends 2 that came with the Misadventures of Tron Bonne, but it's not the one we got over here in the West. That's a boring demo where you get a little sample of the final game. No, Episode 1 only came with Japanese copies of the game, and this serves as a prologue to the second game. It's really a collection of 4 different missions that show off what 2 has to offer. And just a little fun fact, Mega Man Legends 2 is called Rockman-2 Episode 2 in Japan because of this demo. If we got this demo in the West, we'd probably call the final game Legends 2 Episode 2 as well. I'm able to play it in English thanks to the translator Hilltop and a bunch of supporters. You might recognize the name Hilltop because they've translated plenty of other Japan-exclusive PlayStation and PlayStation 2 games as well. I've talked about one of them in the past. All that said, this is a fun demo. It really is just a taste of things that were to come. You can run through a couple new ruins, play a mini game where you have to catch some pigs, and fight Trons and our serve bots all throughout a village. I think the most interesting thing about this disc is the secret dev room you can toggle in the options. There's a bunch of NPCs you can talk to, and a room with a giant Tron, and an even larger role. But okay, I've stalled from talking about this game long enough, but it's for a good reason. I really like the Misadventures of Tron Bonne. Remember, it's a prequel, so the story takes place shortly before the events of Mega Man Legends. The story goes, one day Teasel and Bonne were out looking for a refractor when they were suddenly attacked and kidnapped by Glide. It turns out, Teasel borrowed some Zenny from Glide's boss Loath so they could afford to build the Gessel shaft. That's their giant flying fortress, and that's also where Tron and her serve bots organize missions to make enough money so they can pay off Teasel's debt. And by organizing missions, I mean committing a bunch of robberies. The Bonne pirates are not good people, but they're funny, so they get a pass. So the game is split between management and your more traditional gameplay when it comes to carrying out the missions. We'll start with the missions first, as there's multiple types of them in this game. They all play differently, but well enough for the most part. There's RPG levels where you have to dig through some ruins in search of treasure. There's puzzle missions where you have to steal containers from the docks in a certain amount of moves. And action levels where you control the customizable Gustav to run around town and steal valuables from people's homes. Marvel fans, you recognize this mecha. And of course you recognize the serve bots as well. This game also makes nice use of these guys. A select few follow Tron on these missions, and you can command them around with these beacon bombs to do anything you want them to, from stealing livestock to slowing bosses down so you can pummel them. The RPG levels are just about the only thing I had a problem with while playing this game, by the way. In these, you'll have to command your serve bots to disable traps at certain points by shooting these buttons, but you have to be so precise with the beacon bomb, or they'll just walk next to it and not press it at all, even if your marker is right on the button. There's a sweet spot you have to hit. I thought I was doing something wrong here, so I looked at my footage and guides to see if I missed something, but no, there's just a really small hitbox on these buttons you have to be really precise with, I guess. I really think your mileage is gonna vary depending on how much you enjoy strategizing and taking care of these serve bots. These guys have way more depth than you would think, both in gameplay and character. Each of these serve bots has their own role in the ship. Some of them pilot it, some help Tron manage operations, some are chefs, and some are scientists that allow you to purchase upgrades. You got to get to know these serve bots. There's 40 of them total, and they all have individual stats you have to take care of as well. You can play mini games to make them stronger, or torture them if they get too lazy. And if you upgrade specific serve bots, they'll unlock a skill that can either support you on the battlefield or let you do things like paint the Gustav different colors. If you like the Sonic adventure games, or at least just the Chow Garden, I think this is a game you can appreciate. You can even name them and give your favorite serve bot a red head to make them stand out from the rest. I gave number 8 the red head just cause I think I relate to him the most. Tron Bonne is a very charming game in ways that I miss from Legends 2. And by that, I mean you actually grow to care for a lot of the cast besides the main protagonist and his best friend. The many characters you frequently see and help on your digs, the serve bots who you can tell Tron loves despite their faults. Even Loath and Glide were villains you love to hate. It's such a cute game too. I love the way it's presented with different characters' portraits whenever they're speaking. It almost feels like a visual novel at points. The Misadventures of Tron Bonne is a pretty quick game to run through. I honestly think you can get through it in an evening if you know what you're doing. But man, that's gonna be one pretty fun night. You know, I still think I prefer Legends to this game, but I'm picking Tron Bonne over Legends 2 any day of the week. Honestly, I think I'd take another Bonne Pirate spinoff before Mega Man Legends 3 as well, but I'm probably in the minority there. Play this game, play Tron Bonne. There's not a lot to it, so get to it. When it's all said and done, I love Mega Man Legends, I love the Misadventures of Tron Bonne, and I like Mega Man Legends too. I mean, I still think it's worth a try. Like I said at the beginning of this video, Legends 2 is a good game, and it's largely what I expect from a sequel, but it doesn't have that same magic that Legends captured me with, and that goes a long way for me. Sometimes less is more. I do know for a fact there are people out there who enjoy how deep this game's story gets and unraveling this world's lore, and power to all of you. I'm not saying you shouldn't enjoy this game. I'm just saying it's not my cup of tea. Despite my disliking of the narrative, I still think you can appreciate how ambitious they were with these stories. And you know, when I think back on these games, I'm gonna think of exploring these pretty islands and how the game plays first. That's where these games largely deliver, and that's why I'll remember my time with this series very fondly. None of them are perfect, but I'm very sad I'll never get to play through these games for the first time again. There's always more Mega Man to play through and talk about though. I haven't dabbled into too much of the Battle Network series, despite really liking how that game looks. And you know, maybe it's time I attempt to play through my copy of the Anniversary Collection again and try to see what it is about the core Mega Man games that people love so much. All I know is that for now, we can finally put a close to this saga.
Let's get this show on the road!
Tougher than you look, little man.
But all's fair in love and war.
Mega Man, be careful, please.
The Carbons have decided their own fate.
We exist for this and only this purpose.
I don't know what your life was like before we met, but do what you think is right, no matter what.